Is democracy founded on reason? Part 4. By James P. Pierce. In Orthodox Christianity, governance and society are expected to align with God's will, reflecting a balance between order and freedom, both on the individual and collective levels. This balance is expressed in the concept of symphonia, a harmonious relationship between church and state. In this model, the political authority and the church work in partnership to guide society according to Christian principles, with Christ at the center of all aspects of life. Symphonia, balance between church and state. In Eastern Orthodoxy, the idea of symphonia emphasizes collaboration and mutual respect between secular and ecclesiastical authorities. Ideally, a monarch or ruling authority works in tandem with the church to maintain societal order, justice, and spiritual welfare. The church provides moral guidance, while the state handles practical governance. However, both should reflect and serve the divine order, recognizing that all authority is ultimately given by God. This is in contrast to secularism, where the state operates independently of religious influence, often resulting in a moral vacuum or relativism that can undermine collective spiritual and moral health. The Orthodox model, however, does not mean an authoritarian theocracy where religious leaders dictate laws. Instead, it means the church provides a moral compass that helps inform the governing authority. Monarchy. In Orthodox tradition, Christ as the true king. In a monarchy governed by Orthodox principles, the monarch is seen as God's servant on earth, entrusted with the responsibility of ruling justly and in accordance with Christian values. The ruler must serve the people not out of personal ambition or self-will, but out of love for God and for the well-being of the community. The monarch, much like the saints, is expected to be a model of humility and service, seeking to fulfill the divine will. Historically, Orthodox Christian monarchs such as the Byzantine emperors or Russian tsars were not only political leaders but also defenders of the faith, safeguarding the Orthodox Church and its teachings. Their role was not to rule with an iron fist but to work in harmony with the Church, ensuring that their governance reflected Christian values of justice, mercy, and love. In this model, the divine order is reflected in the governance structure, where Christ is seen as the true king, and the human ruler is merely a steward of God's authority. This is why Orthodox monarchies traditionally centered on the idea of the monarch as a humble servant of God, rather than as an autocrat. Free will and Orthodox governance. Orthodox Christianity places significant emphasis on free will as part of the human experience. Humans are created in the image of God and, therefore, are endowed with the ability to choose between good and evil. In a political context, this means that while a ruler should strive to guide the people toward what is good, individuals still have the freedom to choose their path. However, free will is meant to lead to choosing God's will, not self-will or individualistic autonomy detached from moral truth. The West's heavy emphasis on individualism often diverges from this orthodox understanding. Where the West often frames freedom as self-expression or self-realization, Orthodoxy sees true freedom as being bound to God's will. Real freedom is found in obedience to Christ and participation in the Church, not in individual autonomy for its own sake. This is where the will of the people comes into play. In Orthodox governance, the people's will should ideally align with God's will, meaning that collective governance must be rooted in the same virtues that the Church upholds: humility, self-sacrifice, and love. The people have a voice, but that voice is not independent of God's moral order. Republics and democracies in an Orthodox context. When thinking about republics or more democratic forms of governance within the Orthodox framework, the same principles of symphonia apply. While a monarchy is often seen as a natural reflection of divine hierarchy, republics can also function under Orthodox principles if they maintain a balance between respecting the will of the people and ensuring that the laws and governance reflect God's will. In a republic, the Church would still play a vital role in providing moral guidance, while checks and balances in government could help prevent the rise of oligarchy or tyranny. The will of the people should be considered, but not in a purely secular or individualistic sense. The Church would continue to remind the populace that the ultimate good is found in conforming to Christ, not merely in satisfying earthly desires or pursuing secular progress. While many contemporary republics often emphasize human rights and personal freedom, these must not be divorced from the divine law. Orthodox teaching emphasizes that human rights are legitimate only when they are rooted in God's justice and moral order. When society drifts into secularism, free will can become distorted, leading people to pursue desires contrary to God's design, what the Fathers often call the tyranny of passions. In a republic that operates according to orthodox principles, the state must guard against this by ensuring that its laws and policies align with Christian virtues. The will of the people and the dangers of oligarchy. You raise a critical concern: what happens when the will of the people is manipulated by elites or political factions? This is a danger in both monarchies and republics. When a ruling class, whether it is an oligarchy or an elite political faction, begins to distort the people's will for their own purposes, this is a betrayal not only of the people but of God's will. Orthodox Christianity recognizes this danger. For this reason, a monarchy, or any other system, must have built-in safeguards that prevent corruption, tyranny, or abuse of power. In a monarchy, the Church historically acted as a check on the ruler's authority, holding the monarch accountable to divine law. In a republic, these checks may come through representative governance, laws that reflect Christian principles, and a strong collaboration between church and state. The key is that the state must not be dominated by secularism, where power is wielded purely for human or material ends. When governance is guided by God's will, then the will of the people will be properly ordered toward the common good, rather than descending into the chaos of conflicting individual interests. At its best, orthodox governance would look like a balance where the ruler, whether a monarch or elected officials, is subordinate to divine law while remaining accountable to the people. The people, in turn, must align their will with God's, seeking Christ as the center of both their personal lives and their collective governance. This model would avoid both tyranny, whether by oligarchs or secular elites, and mob rule, ensuring that both church and state serve the common good as defined by the gospel. Checks and balances in orthodox governance. For a stable governance structure, whether a monarchy or a republic, to flourish under orthodox Christian values, there need to be checks and balances in place. The monarch/leader, as servant of Christ, the king or ruling family, must recognize that their authority is derived from God and must act as stewards of that authority, not as absolute rulers. This prevents tyranny. The Church as moral guide. The Church plays a crucial role in holding the ruler accountable to divine law and ensuring that laws are just, promoting the common good. Councils or assemblies, whether in a monarchy or republic, councils of wise and virtuous men and women similar to the Sober in Russian tradition should advise the ruler, ensuring that no single person or group dominates power. The people's voice. The will of the people is important, but it must be an informed will that reflects an understanding of God's moral order. Through catechesis and spiritual formation, the Church ensures that the people's will is aligned with divine truth. Legal and ethical standards. The government should establish laws that reflect Christian virtues of justice, mercy, and humility, ensuring that neither the ruling class nor the majority tramples on the rights of the minority or the vulnerable. Conclusion. In the Orthodox Christian framework, governance, whether monarchy or republic, must reflect divine order, with Christ at the center. This order prevents oligarchy, tyranny, or mob rule by ensuring that both rulers and people submit to God's will. Symphonia is the key to this harmony, with church and state working together to guide society toward justice and holiness, while ensuring that free will leads to alignment with God's eternal truth.